The Mercedes-Benz EQA is very similar to the GLA, except for the fact that it has a fully electric powertrain instead. The model on review today is the EQA 250 Sport, the base level trim, and that can be found for £44,500 without options. Now there is the EQA 300 and 350 as well, and then there's the AMG premium lines as well to consider. In this review, we'll be looking at the base level trim and to see if it's actually worth your money. And if you want a detailed breakdown between the different trim levels, do check out our written review, which will go in a little bit more detail about this down in the description below. So to kick things off, we're going to talk about its exterior design, and here the vehicle shares many similarities with the GLA. In fact, I was parked next to a brand new GLA and there was very little differences between the two. The main difference, however, is the fact that the EQA has some blue badges littered around it, and of course it's got a covered front grille. Now this is to improve aerodynamic efficiency and the fact that it's kind of redundant to have air flowing into the front mounted motor. Now the front profile of the vehicle is extremely stylish, at least in my opinion. I love how the headlight design is made, and even the bonnet and the front bumper, it just all really oozes class. The same could be said about the rear of the vehicle, where the tail lights similarly extend from one side of the vehicle to the other and have also got this quite stylish design. Now the same, in my opinion, couldn't be said about the side profile. I don't really like the fact that the manufacturer has used plastic inserts around the wheel arches and side skirts, and it kind of detracts from the overall design. Of course, this is very similar to the GLA, so if you do like the GLA side profile, this will be kind of a non-issue for you. Now, in the EQA, you do get standardized 18-inch alloys, but you do find larger sized alloys in the more expensive trims. Now, moving inside the cabin, the Mercedes EQA absolutely oozes class. It's arguably one of the best looking interiors that you can find in an electric vehicle. Take, for example, the air vents. Well, it's a small little inclusion, very much like the A-Class that it has been from previous generations. It has this kind of airplane cockpit type of vibe, which it just looks nice and stylish. And the same could be said about the materials that have been chosen around the dashboard and even with the upholstery. Now the car not only looks good during the day but also at night, and of course this won't be to everyone's taste, but you can customize the colors that are portrayed around the cabin. I chose blue because it's fitting with the rest of the theme of the car, and of course you can fully disable this if you so wish, so therefore if you don't want to be distracted by the LED lights which are around the cabin. Now aside from being good looking, the interior is also very practical. Take for example the steering wheel. Not only is it very easy to handle, but in terms of the button layout and configuration, it just makes sense. There's also a touch slider on the left hand side to control media on the infotainment system, while the right one, at least in the UK, is to control the instrument cluster, which by the way has got a 10-inch form factor. It's very vivid and it just looks absolutely beautiful no matter which angle you're looking at. The same could be said about the infotainment system, which shares the same sort of size, and here it also supports Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as standard via USB connection. Now on the subject of technology, I should also mention the MBUX system, which is present on other Mercedes-Benz vehicles, but in the EQA it's not only aesthetically pleasing, but there's no visual lag transitioning between different menus or apps. Now for those who are subscribed, you'll also know that I do dedicated audio reviews of every vehicle I review, and indeed there's one for the EQA 250 Sport. It'll be up on your pop-up banner down in the description below or in the pinned comments. What I will say in a nutshell is that a 9-speaker audio system that comes as standard is pretty impressive. Now if you do want to bolster that audio system, you can do so by going for one of the AMG lines, where you've got a 10-speaker system in the premium variant, and in the premium plus you've then got a 12-speaker Burmester system as well. Now moving swiftly on to interact with your media, you do have the buttons on the steering wheel as I did mention before, but you've also got a touch slider found by the center console. Indeed, the touch button over here not only supports various inputs, but also has got haptic feedback, which just makes the experience all that bit better if you don't want to be touching away at the infotainment system and rather keep your hands towards the center console. The little armrest over here is also nicely appreciated. Now at the center console there is of course storage capacity. There is a retractable cover, which underneath it you'll find 2 cup holders and some non-slip areas, and also the Type-C port as well. And then further down the center console you've then got the center armrest compartment, which has another Type-C port as well for charging, and you've then got some compartment storage here for you to place, let's say, larger valuables such as a large size purse or wallet. Now there's the door bins, the glove compartment, and of course the rear door bins as well for you to place some other goods such as, let's say, a 500ml bottle. Now moving to the rear of the vehicle, of course we have got the boot, which can be operated by lifting the badge, and indeed by operating it via the remote control or via a button found by the driver's side door. Now in terms of the capacity, it does have 100 litres less than the equivalent GLA. However, here you've still got 340 litres with the seats up, and if you were to pop down the seat, this figure extends to 1,320 litres. Now, nevertheless, in terms of the overall storage capacity, I do like the fact that Mercedes-Benz has integrated a 40-20-40 split with the rear seats, which makes it quite convenient to take elongated goods while still having two individuals at the back. And then the underfloor compartment storage is very handy for taking a singular charging cable. It just about fits over here. Then elsewhere you've got some mesh compartments on the side and some extra hooks as well for you to take some goods if you don't want them to be flailing around. Now, moving back inside, we have to talk about the seating comfort. And first off, let's talk about the rear of the cabin. Now here I really love the fact that the rear seats are actually flat. They're not diagonally wedged, unlike a lot of other electric vehicles out there on the market. And as a result, as someone who's just under 6 foot, I've got plenty of legroom. I feel quite natural in terms of my seating, and not only that, but I've also got plenty of headroom as well, which is pretty surprising for a somewhat compact SUV. Now there is 5 seats at the back, but if you don't want to use it, you can pop this out and you've got an armrest, and it even reveals some pretty swifty and swanky cup holders. Now elsewhere at the rear of the cabin, you do also have a Type-C port for charging and a small little storage bay if you want to place, let's say, some loose change and valuables on the non-slip surface. As for the front of the cabin, it's similarly impressive in terms of headroom and legroom. However, it's a shame to see that manually adjustable seats are used over here. For a car that costs upwards of £44,500, one might have expected electronically adjustable seats as standard. Indeed, that's not the case, and if you do want that, you'll have to go for the far more premium Plus variant of the AMG line in order to benefit from electric seats. Now moving on, we get on to driving comfort, and I did forget to talk about the seat comfort. And indeed here the seats on the EQA are a little bit firm, which I found a little bit surprising. While they're very nicely made and look really nice, I was expecting them to be a little bit softer on the back side. Now as for the driving comfort, the cabin noise of the EQA is absolutely sensational. Be it if you're at standstill or even if you're on the go, there's very little road noise, be it from the tyres or indeed from the wind deflecting off the A-pillar. Mercedes should be really commended in this domain because the cabin noise is really kept to an absolute bare minimum. If you want some more details by that, I do suggest you to check out my audio review, as I did reference before. It'll be down in the description below, and it goes into a little bit more detail about the in-cabin experience. Now on the subject of comfort, I do have to talk about its suspension system, and I sound a tad bit surprised, and that's because it's actually pretty rock hard. Now bearing in mind we've got the 18-inch alloys over here, and of course you can change tyres, but in terms of its suspension setup, I was expecting to be really floaty soft, and right now we're even on comfort mode. So when you're pottering around town, you'd normally expect to be, well, pretty much going over speed bumps or potholes with ease, but that's not the case. You really do feel quite a lot of the road, and you do seesaw around when you're going over speed bumps, like we do right there. But on the plus side, and I would say on the flip side, when you go at speed on country roads, the car does grip the road just that little bit better in comparison to, for example, a Kia e-Niro. But nevertheless, you still do experience quite a bit of body roll, and in comparison here to the XC40 Recharge Twin Pro, the Mercedes EQA can't really compete, be it going at speed or indeed when going at a slower pace. One might have expected a hydraulic system or air suspension to be fitted as standard, but unfortunately that's not the case, and as a result you should be aware of the slightly firmer ride. Now speaking about driving at speed, of course this leads me on to its performance. Now here the EQA 250 Sport has a singular front mounted motor which dispatches 140 kilowatts of power, which equates to 190 horsepower. There's 250 Newton meters of readily available torque, and I had it tested from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 7.69 seconds. Now of course there is the EQA 300 and 350 4MATIC, which have 2 electric motors and therefore will get you more power and indeed more torque, and therefore bring down that 0 to 60 time. However, still in this case, these vehicles still can't compete with the likes of the Volvo XC40 Recharge Twin Pro, which really dispatches an absolutely blistering experience if of course performance is what you're really looking for in a compact SUV. Now elsewhere, top speed is limited to 99 miles an hour, which I was actually slightly disappointed disappointed in. Not only is this a little bit lower than some of its competitors, but also given that we are talking about a German vehicle and therefore there might be quite a few German viewers and indeed owners, they are going to be, well, limited on the German Autobahn because, well, they can't really go, well, pretty much unlimited. Now, peak performance and top speed might not actually be all that important to some consumers. However, electric range will certainly be paramount, given that we're talking about an all-electric vehicle over here. Now, from its 66.5 kilowatt hour battery pack, I attained around 210 to 220 miles, which is perfectly respectable. However, one should consider that there are vehicles which come in at a cheaper price tag and yet perform better in terms of range. Take, for example, the likes of the Volvo XC40 Recharge Twin Pro. It has around 240 to 250 miles on a single charge. The likes of the Hyundai Kona Electric, the Kia e-Niro and the Kia Soul EV all achieve upwards of 260 miles. The same could be said about the VW ID4. And then we have got the Skoda Enyaq iV, which then achieves 300 miles. I guess you get the picture that I'm trying to paint over here. Vehicles that come in at a cheaper price tag offer longer electric range and thus means you'll have a little less anxiety when you're going for longer distance drives. So the question I have for you guys is 210 to 220 miles sufficient for your needs, specifically given we're talking about a car that costs upwards of £44,000. Should you expect more, or do you think it is perfectly suitable given the rest of the premium experience that Mercedes-Benz is offering? Now, for you to recoup energy back into the battery pack, you can do so by regenerative braking. Now, the flappy paddles that are found behind the steering wheel allow you to do just that. Pushing on the left side, so the minus side, means that you increase the regenerative braking level, and as such means that when you're lifting off the accelerator pedal, it decelerates the vehicle for you. Now, I should note that there is a level of harshness which is somewhat not appreciated in the D-, mode. Here, the harshest mode of the ones that you can find is a little bit, well, off in my opinion. It's almost like the biting point is a little bit wrong, and as a result when you lift off the foot it's just all that bit too harsh, and yet it's just a little bit hard to moderate. In my case, I actually quite liked using the D- mode, so not the double minus mode, in order to bring the car to a little bit more of a standstill. The problem here is that no, the car won't come to a complete standstill when you lift off. It will still roll at roughly 4 miles an hour, and as such you're still going to have to resort to pressing on the brake pedal. And yes, pressing on the brake pedal will give you some degree of regenerative braking, but in terms of one pedal driving, the Mercedes EQA can't really compete with certain other vehicles out there which provide, well, a true one pedal driving experience. Now, aside from regenerative braking, of course you do have the ability to recharge the vehicle by plugging it in. Now, here you've got a Type 2 and CCS port. The latter provides up to 100 kilowatts of input, meaning that you can go from 10 to 80% in roughly 30 minutes. If you find an 11 kilowatt charger, then you'll be able to go from 10 to 100% in roughly 5.5 hours. Now, this will be a little bit more on a 7 kilowatt public charger, which is a lot more common than the 11 kilowatt supply. As for a 3-pin plug, then, well, this was going to take you roughly 30 hours to complete that same charge, so therefore you might need to do some advanced planning if you're going on longer distance drives and you don't have access to a public or home place charger. Now, when it comes to safety, the vehicle scored 5 out of 5 stars on Euro NCAP's rigorous crash tests, and I was particularly impressed by its adult and child occupancy, but I can't really comment on that personally because I haven't put it through its paces in that domain, but I can talk about its driver assistance systems. Now, here the vehicle comes fitted as standard with cruise control, active lane departure assist, and also blind spot monitoring. Now, if you want to bolster the experience, you can go for the 1500 driver assistance package, which adds blind spot monitoring system with exit warning, adaptive cruise control, which actually works a treat, and steer assist, among a few other features. Now, I do like the fact that all these systems actually do work pretty well. However, I do find it disappointing that the vehicle at £44,000 doesn't come with all of these features features as standard. Likewise, a head-up display is only available in the most expensive AMG Line Premium Plus trim, which is somewhat disappointing. Now, as for visibility and parking, here the former is absolutely excellent. There's no issues when it comes to peering around corners, be it the front, side or at the rear. Now, as for parking, you've got front and rear sensors that come as standard, and a rear view camera which is hidden underneath the rear Mercedes badge. This props open each time you're reversing, or indeed when you come to a standstill, in order to protect your rear from being shunted, at least that's what I can tell. Now, if you want 360-degree cameras, these are only available in the more expensive trim levels, so that's just something to be mindful of, and potentially a little bit disappointing given the price of the vehicle. And so this all leads me on to my verdict. What do I make about the Mercedes-Benz EQA? Well, frankly, its exterior and interior design absolutely ooze class, and while I do appreciate that its boot capacity is reduced from the GLA, I think it will suffice for a lot of consumers on the market for a compact SUV such as this one. However, the major sticking points for me are its electric range, its power output, and its slightly stiffened suspension, which doesn't quite make sense. Consider that it's a £44,500 vehicle, and at this price point you can find far better alternatives, such as the Volvo XC40 Recharge Twin Pro, high performance, decent range. Then you've got the VW ID4 and the Skoda Enyaq iV, fantastic range and also far more spacious. Then you've got the Kia e-Niro, the Kia Soul EV and the Hyundai Kona Electric, a little bit more compact, such as similar to the EQA, but then offering far superior range at a far more affordable price, coming in at around £32,000. So as a result, these vehicles get my recommendation, but of course that's our subjective opinion, so I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, if you've liked this independent detailed review, definitely do drop a like, and of course consider subscribing if you haven't already, and hitting that bell notification. Now, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, take care of yourselves, and goodbye.